You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
All right, everybody. That music means it's time once again for Options Insider Radio, the interview program here on the old network where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of options and derivatives and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. My name is Mark Longo, and we're coming at you from the FIA conference here in sunny Chicago, from the old studio, which is nice, but it's a great opportunity for us to really bring a variety of different people through the studio over this past week, and we've done so. Hopefully you've been enjoying it and winding down our FIA coverage here. But I'm pleased to welcome on an old friend of the network, even though he hasn't been on in quite some time. It has indeed been many years. I'm sure that is probably an oversight on our part. He is Mark Woolfenden, the managing director over there at Euromoney Tradedata. Mark, welcome back to the Options Insider Radio Network. Great name, by the way. It's very memorable. It really resonates, rolls off the tongue.
Thank you very much, Mark, and it's great to be back again.
Yes. Last time, I'm thinking the last time you and I chatted, it was in a different studio. It was in one of our mobile recording studios that we do at all the different OIC conferences. I believe it was in Austin, Texas, was it not?
That's correct, yeah, very well.
So a lot has changed since then. The name has changed. You guys have done a lot. A lot has gone on in your neck of the woods. We have MIFID, EMIR, we have Brexit, all these good things crazy going on. But before we even get ahead of ourselves, let's start. It's been a little while, like you said, since you've been on. We have quite a few new listeners who've joined the network since then. So let's start, give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background and what it is that you guys do over there at, I keep wanting to say, Euromoney Tradedata. It's old branding, but it's new to me.
Yeah, sure. And I think the FOW label is sort of stuck with us. They are still part of the Euromoney group, and they run the news and events part of
I was just speaking to FOW people at the conference last night, which is probably why I have it on the brain still.
Yeah, no worries. So Euromoney is a holding company, Euromoney Global Investor, institutional investor, I should say, and we've been running this business now for about 21 years, Euromoney Tradedata, and it provides reference data for futures and options worldwide, and we supply to probably 9 out of 10 of the tier 1 banks reference data in their back office, but also a bit more in the front office now as well. So three core parts of the business: contract specifications, symbology, a huge part of the business, and more recently regulatory data, which has been quite a pain point for a lot of folk in the industry. So we've been around for some time. We are a trusted partner within the industry. We have an aggregator model, and it's also a data community model. So you hear quite often of new models coming out about how we not franchise the data, but basically democratise the data and how folk contribute towards that. And we've had that model going for quite a few years already. So we aggregate data that each firm would otherwise have to do themselves, but we normalise it, validate it, and then basically package it up into the formats that our clients desire. So we customise a lot of our data output.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because we are hearing a lot of that these days. You know, for a long time, market data was, you know, these silos that were fiercely protected and fiercely priced by the various exchange entities and other things out there. But we have seen these growing movements here in the U.S. A lot of it came out of the tech world where they thought, you know, data should be free and open and available to everyone. And so we're seeing a lot of movements on that side. Of course, the crypto movement has invaded Chicago here in particular. So we're seeing a lot of pushback on that. We've had a few crypto derivatives exchanges in here recently who are talking about, you know, our market data will be available to everyone and those types of things. So you're right, there is a little bit of a pushback against that model versus that traditional take your market data, you charge as much as you possibly can for it and hope for that can last for as long as it can. We are seeing some cracks start to emerge in that dam. So it sounds like you guys over there at Euromoney Tradedata a little bit ahead of the curve there. So congratulations to you there, Mark. You're on the cutting edge of what's coming from market data.
Thank you. And I think we've always set our stall out for where we have enterprise contracts that the client who subscribes has a right to that data. So we often get calls from different parts of the world for the same company saying, I'd like to have some position limit data, for example. We then put them directly in contact to our market data vendors or the procurement folks to say, you do have a contract, you have a need in that particular part of your business, and usually it ends up with us producing a file, which has a small production cost, but the rights to use the data are encompassed within the enterprise license. So we've deliberately not double played or triple played the points of entry into organisations because of that.
Now, you mentioned the last time you were on, way back in the dark days of Austin, Texas. There, I'm trying to remember what year that was.
2014.
Was it 2014? Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was 2014. It was that long ago. Wow. It seems like it was. I was going to say 2, maybe 2.5, but 4. Okay, fine. I think time flies.
And it's about 28 years, dog years in the derivatives, I think.
In your neck of the woods, definitely. I'm looking around. I don't think we have the sign for Texas. I don't know what would happen to that one. So yeah, we have all the others we've done over the years.
Yeah, it would have been a big sign.
Yeah, it would have been a big sign. We have Miami, we have New Orleans, we have all the other ones. Somehow we have LA over there. I don't know. Somehow we have to look into that about where the text is. That's why I don't know the year, because I don't see the sign in front of me every day. But I digress, listeners, another company. But last time you were on, way back in those dark days, we were talking about your efforts in the symbology space. I know that's still a big effort for you. So maybe let's start there, a point that a lot of our audience can clearly get behind. We were talking back then about you guys were helping, the U.S. option space and other markets to really kind of maybe make symbology a little bit more intuitive. We have taken a lot of steps in that direction since then, a lot of that due to your efforts. But clearly there's more to be done. Why don't you catch us up on what you guys have been working on in that space since those dark days of 2014?
Sure. Well, a couple of years after the OIC in Texas, we have an alliance partnership with the CUSIP Service Bureau, run by S&P and out in New York. And in 2016, we added more options to the North American market, which were then labelled with the CUSIP identifier, and single stock futures as well. And so the numbering and the whole identification of option contracts still goes on at quite a pace. There were some difficulties on the OSI change, but what we have is a complete cross-reference database for that. So there is something on the horizon, which we'll be able to talk a bit more about next week. We're extending the allocation of CUSIP, which is a well-proven identifier in the marketplace. In terms of the requirements under the European legislation and regulation, symbology has become an even more important part to transaction reporting than it ever was. The original basis of symbology was to basically map all of the different vendor platform companies who identify the same contracts with different identifiers. And this caused a lot of friction in the back office of clients. So we have a service which came to the market, which essentially was a plug-in which allowed open positions to be taken in, completely mapped against the correct instrument, and then we can enrich it with back office codes as well. So I think we've done our bit in the industry over the last sort of 10 years or so in neutralising what would otherwise be a barrier of symbology, so folk can get on with what they really want to do, which is like wealth creation, trading, and the back office flows as best it can do.
You know, whenever the regulators get involved in symbology, that it's just going to be fantastic, right? Because they're the best arbiters of how the symbology should work. You know, they add a couple of tags here, a couple of identifiers. Next thing you know, instead of a simple symbol, it's just string of alphanumeric nonsense that goes on forever.
Sure. Well, in the MIFID 2 incarnation, which went live January this year, the amount of data that had to be reported on the transaction went up by 3 or 4 times, and the granularity with which reporting has to be done has certainly driven our business in the last 2 years to add a lot more granular data, tagging, flagging, as we call it. And this has seen a great success within our client base, because they are the onus upon them is to report and report correctly. And there is evidence of fines being applied for transaction reporting that's been incorrect. There are still MIFID 1 fines that are going on now, so with 3 or 4 times much more data reported under MIFID 2, I think there's a real latency if the regulator wants to look back in 3 or 4 years' time to folk who even today are reporting the new MIFID 2 transaction reporting formats. So this whole area of investment that has driven by the regulator for firms has been really at the top of the list over the last few years. And I think after the 3rd of January, it was a big sigh of relief in the industry. And apart a few niggles after that, a bit of fine-tuning, folk are then actually recapitalising other projects which are non-regulatory, which are more about competitive advantage, more about gaining new customers. A lot of that which went on the sort of back burner because of the huge burden of regulation.
Well, you invoked it. MIFID has kind of been the elephant in the room for you guys for the last couple of years. You know, it's something a lot of for our audience that is primarily domestic focused. They've had the luxury of mostly avoiding that. For all the institutional listeners we have who deal with overseas business, it has not been. They have not had that luxury. They've had to deal with it. So it's been a bit of a beast, as you kind of mentioned. It's been a bit of a boon for your industry, because in times like these, when things get a little bit challenging and there's a lot of demanding level of detail and nuance required by all these new regulations, they turn to a firm like yours and let you guys do the heavy lifting. So it's a lot of work, but also an opportunity for guys like you. So walk us through maybe like 10,000 foot level. You just touched on it with the symbology, but what's really been a big driver for you guys with all these MIFID 2 regulations, and what's really been the big driver for you? We just touched on symbology. What else have people really been coming to you for assistance with over the past few years as this deadline loomed?
Yeah, I think we've always had a regulatory data offering, and that's been extended and expanded as a result of new regulation coming in. And really, there's been no noise apart from regulation focus in the last 2 years, 2.5 years from firms. That really is all they've been asking us to solve for them. So a lot of other projects of reinvestment into improving efficiencies and systems has gone by the wayside, but at the same time, the investment that was put aside to fulfill regulatory obligations has also been used to improve processes and systems, and it had a nice halo to do that. So whereas firms have been just trying to justify funds for many years to improve back office investments, there was a bit of a silver lining in the regulatory budget to apply to improvement of systems. And essentially, the regulatory focus was to pull data from all different parts of the systems into a sort of management information layer at the top. But in order to do that, they had to improve underlying systems as well. So that's been really been the main focus. And I think the interesting nuance is that for firms who predominantly trade in Europe and are under the regulations have been for some time, they were well conversant with the regulation, even though towards the end the opaqueness was still a little bit there on certain very granular aspects. But I think the third country rule, which is, if American stock is listed on the US exchange, there is an overriding need to report that. So third country reporting has been a real big issue, and I think we've heard from the chairman of the CFTC a couple of days ago about the way that the EU is even trying to toughen the regulation outside of its own borders. So there's been some of that already in place, which folk have addressed and have accepted, but the more recent ones, I think, is obviously going to get a lot of pushback, according to the chairman.
They're not threatening a MIFID 3, are they? We're not quite there yet, are we? You're scaring me here, Mark. With
no, MIFID 3 has been talked about, but I think...
I don't think anyone's ready for that yet, are they?
No, I think...
Emotionally, spiritually, no one's ready for that.
Well, culturally as well, I think all bets are off at the moment, given the issue that UK is dealing with at the moment. I'm not going to mention that word.
Yes, there's other things going on that maybe are top of mind in your neck of the woods right now. Well, speaking of necks of the woods, and here in the U.S., obviously we also had our own version of MIFID, which was, of course, Dodd-Frank and all the issues that were going on with that. How much of a challenge was it for you guys? You guys obviously, European-centric, for helping European firms. Was there a lot of people coming to you, a lot of firms coming to you, kind of going the opposite way, saying, hey, help us get compliant to these various legal and continuously ongoing changes that are, because Dodd-Frank isn't done. Dodd-Frank continues to evolve and change. So unlike MIFID, which had a deadline and some relatively clear outlines, we don't really have that luxury here. It's just whatever the whims are blowing this week, that's what Dodd-Frank is. So has that been a big driver for you guys as well, European firms looking to come back here and dealing with this morass of regulation here?
I think our business is international, so we're dealing with a lot of American clients, and about half our revenue comes from the US, so we have a lot of experience in that. Just on the Dodd-Frank point at the moment, obviously, new president has said he might repeal some of elements of that, so it is a bit of a moving feast. But what elements exist are there? We have addressed through accountability levels, large trade reporting on CFTC levels. So there are still tags and flags that need to happen on the US trading markets as well, and we've addressed that. And also we've done that through our client base, who have quite an overall global view of regulation. So whilst the regulations are distinct for each jurisdiction, there is an overall view that big international companies have to take, and it has often been talked about regulatory arbitrage as well. Is it better to trade over in Asia or in Europe or in the States? And that's been occupying quite a lot of folk for quite a long time. And there are some very senior positions within firms that is their job, to optimize global regulation and actually make sense of it. I don't envy those people at all. That's
not a gig I don't think I would be well suited for. But, you mentioned, I know you don't want to mention the B word, but obviously there is a little bit of tumult in your neck of the woods as well. And it's a little bit of a similar impact what we're seeing here in Dodd-Frank, where we don't really know kind of what the outcome. We have an idea what we think is going to be, but there's talk of changes and new votes and new all these other things. So you're kind of up in the air there as well. So how crazy has that been for you guys as well? Are firms coming to you? Is this maybe the new driver post MIFID to just trying to make sense of everything? Yeah,
well, I think first of all, I'd like to make a comment. I was at the CME party and got talking to a guy who was ex-Fed, a guy I knew for quite a while back, and he said, "Welcome to our world," because I said Brexit. I said it. I'll try not to say it again. It's actually dividing our country. And he said, well, that's what we're used to culturally about, the politics over there. So
that's the U.S. way to do it. Yeah, bitterly divided
absolutely.
Until the end.
but I think it's a manifestation of real democracy that you can actually talk about a difference in opinion. And I think for our business, there's no or little effect, because we are dealing with international companies who would view a separate UK as another jurisdiction. They just have to find the way around the rules for and trade there. I mean, there have been some movement of firms actually taking offices in Amsterdam or France just as a sort of precautionary measure until we really know how the landscape sort of transpires. But we're talking, the folks you talk to, the folk I talk to, they're international business leaders. They know how to cope with this stuff, and therefore it's something that it's just another challenge we're having to go through, and obviously more locally for us at the moment.
Well, let's move away from the dark clouds of regulation for a little bit. Talk about something more cheery. Obviously, you have a lot of other irons in the fire over there when you're not busy dealing with these various regulatory minutiae. So what else is coming down the pike here? What else have you been working on in the 4 years? I still can't believe it's been 4 years since you and I talked. What are some the other big initiatives when you aren't nose to the grindstone on things like MIFID 2?
Yeah, sure. We have put a lot of effort in over the last sort of 18 months to migrate our whole business operating platform into the cloud.
What is this cloud you speak of? I've never heard of this, Mark. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's a silver cloud. I don't know, hopefully. We're on Azure services, so we're not on the Amazon web, but it's a policy, and that really works very well for us. It's a great model for our business that we can scale costs according to our capacity. And as part, so we literally, all our operating procedures are now in the cloud. Our production, our data management, our capture from vendors, it's all in the cloud. And that's been a great achievement by our guys. What it has also led us to is to offer a new product which we've launched. It's called Tradedata Central, and it has a number of components, the biggest one of which is underlying the API. So whereas before our main business has been bulk business to clients, in a sort of tier ones and tier twos, we now have an opportunity to go out to a much wider audience through an API where they don't need as much data. They need it on demand. They can match open positions with it, and they can check and validate, their regulatory reporting with it. And it offers new startups a great opportunity to get into this market with a low payload data that is proven in a wider marketplace. So that's really where there's been a big difference for us. We've been thinking about it for 10 years, so even before Austin, and it's taken us this time, and the time is actually right now to have actually done that, because I think the developments in the cloud, infrastructure platform as a service, and all the elements around it have now sort of converged. And the functionality that we get out of cloud providers now just wasn't there even three years ago. So the time is right for us to do that. So we're on a campaign now to make our data as widely used across the market. It's been at sort of the top of the pyramid before, but it's to get it into every part of the industry that where they need that data, you turn back the page and it's literally our data underneath it. And it enlarges the data community model that has been very successful for us.
Well, you've hit two of the three big buzzwords. You hit cloud and you hit I'm blank. API, and then all you're meeting is crypto, and then we hit the trifecta of buzzwords these days. But it's funny. Pretty much a lot of the vendors who come through here over the past few years, particularly ones not so much on your neck of the woods who are more on the data, maybe back office side, but particularly ones who have to do the front ends and things. It's been a challenge for them because they spend all this time on a GUI and nobody wants it. Everybody says, just give me. The second part of that story is if you don't walk in the door with a very robust API, you really don't even have a starting point to the conversation, because most of these firms, trading firms, they have 27 screens, and yet still they claim they have no screen real estate, so they want to just pull it into their API and do what they want with it. So it sounds like you guys took your time coming to the API party, but now you're finally there. And is that open more doors for you? Because like I said, everyone, at least here in our domestic audience here that we deal with on the institutional side, they kind of lead with API these days. And if you don't have that, it's hard to even get the conversation going when you want to talk to them.
Sure, and it has, and even at the show this week, we've had a lot of very interesting conversations for folk wanting data via API in a smaller form. We're also just joined the FinTech Sandbox as well to sort of incubate the sort of FinTech folk who may need to, who are developing into the space as well. And on top of the API, we are looking at, interesting, you mentioned UIs, looking at rolling out Excel plugin, because that's still a widely used way, a user interface, effectively, and a dashboard and an enhanced version of our online offering, which allows much greater search facility and opening up much more of our data than we have before. So this is typically used for client services, or when they're trying to get a trade bake sorted out. Typically, it's gone onto a sort of website and you can search and get the right information. We can do an API call. It depends on how a firm is geared up. And I think from our experience, where we're delivering very large data files into repositories that are then called upon from different parts and different systems of a firm, the folk on the ground don't always have an easy access to that core data. And so through other UI products, it's like having a virtual database that we delivered into the firm, but much more accessible and at a low cost of implementation as well, and very much more at going more of a sort of personal user level within firms.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch the evolution on that side of the space as well. And for your neck of the woods, of course, the regulatory data side, we've seen a lot of pushback, when we talk to people who are more, on the front office, front end execution side, where it's all about latency and everything. Cloud is still a little bit slow to be adopted there because, the latency it's improved, but it's still not where it needs to be for these people who are spending millions on co-location and everything to get executed in fractions of a second. The cloud just isn't there yet. But for what you're doing on the back office data side, cloud is a fantastic use case for that. So it sounds like since I've talked to you in all these long 4 years, you've pulled everything into the 21st century there, Mark. So congratulations to you guys over there on adopting. Again, all you're missing is crypto, and you've got the trifecta.
Well, we had a conversation with a nascent crypto exchange that are going to start next year, and essentially our response was if it's a product that our customers want to trade, we will list that as an exchange and we'll list it as products. So, as I said, we're primarily post-trade, and I think you talked about the use of the cloud is exactly right. And yes, there are folk investing lots of money to get the latency down at the front end. And I have to say, walking around the show this year, your heart goes out to the guys with a big piece of hardware in front of us. And I
did see more than I usually see of those. You kind of wonder, where are these guys fitting into all this? Yeah, and it was odd. The big machine, the fan going. And you're like, this is old school.
What you see is what you get, really. And I think it must be a major challenge for them to differentiate a black box like that.
My favorite is when they have like 3 or 4 of them next to each other, booth after booth, and they all have their machines going. You're like, really? How do you differentiate from the 3 guys even next to you? It's a bit of a challenge. Yeah. But you mentioned the show. You're here in town for the big FIA Expo. You talked a little bit about it, but anything catching your eye? And what was it that brought you to the show? I hear a lot of people. I don't know if you guys exhibited this year or not. I hear a lot of people come to the show and they say they come to the show almost half because if they don't come, people will say, well, oh, they're not here, they're in trouble, something's bad. So it's very much a show the flag type of event. Is that the primary reason you guys come, or were you guys out here? Like you mentioned, you have a lot of new offerings now, the API, the cloud, and things. So you have a lot more to talk about. So maybe was it part of that too? And what was your takeaway from the show this year?
Okay, well, we've been coming to the show for 10 or 12 years now, so it's very much a highlight part of our sort of marketing year. A lot of folk here. It's a very efficient way of getting in front of those folk. I must just say my favourite stand in all of this is the CFTC whistleblower stand. They don't.
They have very nice whistles.
Yeah, but they don't get many people. Anyway, so it's a great platform for us. And you asked about what caught the attention. I think there was obviously discussion about blockchain, but there's also artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic processing automation. We have a bit of RPA in what we do at the moment, certainly on the symbology mapping. It's not quite AI and it's not quite machine learning, but we are looking to invest more seriously in the skills that we're required to do that, and because we're a data management business. And as I said, the big area is trying to auto-map symbology from different sources, and we've been quite successful in doing that, just creating an exceptional level sort of tweaking to make the map actually work correctly. So I think there's I heard a number of panels. There's a lot of folks still putting money into blockchain. There are folk pushing AI and ML, and I think now that's got more legs on it in the short term because people are using it now. And I read a quote that said firms are investing into AI and ML not to get a competitive advantage, but just still be able to compete because other folk are actually using it. So I think that for me is the theme, and that will accelerate much more because we are collectively a big data business, as in a lot of data and also big data that surround it. And I think the way which exchanges are looking to monetize the data from source, I think that's going to be all part of this mix going forward about how you really are very efficient at using the right data, but only once.
It's kind of like table stakes now, right? You have to kind of just ante up just to maintain your seat at the table, because you never know if this will pay out. If your competitors are using this quite a bit in a year or two, and you haven't invested at least a little bit there to get there, you could find yourself, you're right, markedly behind in the coming years. Well, Mark, I'm glad we can get you through the actual studio. We like our traveling ones as well, but this is the nexus of the audio empire here. It spreads out from here to the email and to the online and to all the other things that we do, but this is where the audio all flows through here. So before you head out, though, I know you mentioned a bunch of things you guys are already working on, things you've changed in the 4+ years since we've talked, which is crazy. But before we go, if you want to leave our audience with any maybe hints, any teases of what's coming down the pike, what they can expect from you guys, now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Okay, sure. A couple of things. One more imminent. Next week we have an announcement from, as we're joined a partner with the QSIP Service Bureau, about how we're extending the type of contracts that QSIP are allocated to. I can't say any more than that at this moment, but that will lead into better symbology, better workflow processes for folk in their operations. Basically, we get asked very often by our clients, why can't we turn our attention to other asset classes? And so we have an active program at the moment looking at what are the gaps in our portfolio, as it were, and what other asset classes could we apply our skills to, notably symbology. There are issues of symbology in other parts of the market. There are also issues in some of the more detailed and complex parts of the market, like swaps and so on, which are becoming fiendishly sort of complex. But there is also the thought of alternative data. I'm not mentioning it as a buzzword, because alternative data needs a route to the traded market eventually. So how do you translate additional data through a process of identification of identity, and then how do you translate that into tradable products that actually correlate? So we heard an example at the show about on alternative data at one of the sessions on if a more pipeline is burning, folk are taking photographs of it. It's quicker than a news feed. The markets could potentially react more quickly to that. But so does an oil pipeline in sort of mid-US affect the WTI or not? It's that compression of time which is really important. But how do you, in an automated way, translate that sort of social media source to an actively traded sort of contract? That's more of an outlier, but it's certainly the way we're trying to think about where we can apply our skills in niche, as opposed to going to commoditized sort of markets.
Well, Mark, like I said, I'm glad we can get you on. We'll have to do it more often than once every 4 years. Yeah. But you certainly do come bringing a lot of goodies when we do wait 4 years, so maybe that's a good thing. But that said, Mark, if people are interested in learning more about all the things you talked about here, the symbology, the post-MIFID assistance, all the other things, the cloud, the updated AI, where should they go? Or AI, updated API. Maybe you have a good AI too, but API. Where should they go? What should they do?
Okay, well, the core presentation is at www.euromoneytradedata.com, where you can find a lot of resources on there. There's video, there's media, solution sheets, and a means of actually contacting us.
There you go, Euromonytradedata.com to learn more. And Mark, we'll see you again, hopefully less than 4 years.
I really look forward to that.
Great, thanks
you.
a lot.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.